The Republican whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we'll be losing several members to retirement at the end of this year, including my friend Roy Blunt. Roy and I have served together for the majority of my time in the Senate, and I also served with him for several years in the House of Representatives. We started in the House at the same time, and we became friends right away. Our wives have become friends as well through the years, and it has been a joy over the years to host Roy and Abby in South Dakota, along with their son Charlie, and to visit them in Missouri. On a personal level, I'm going to miss Roy a lot, and the Senate as an institution is going to miss Roy as well. Roy is someone who aspires to be involved in doing the hard things, and throughout his congressional career, he's put himself forward for positions where he can make a difference. He became Chief Deputy Whip just 2 years after becoming a member of the House, and he was elected Majority Whip just 4 years later, winning the position earlier in his career than any member of Congress in 8 decades. It's been a similar story in the Senate, where Roy was elected Vice Chairman of the Republican Conference in his first year. In 2019, he became Chairman of the Republican Policy Committee, which plays an important role in providing members and staff with the resources they need on the issues. And he's done that while serving as the top Republican on the Senate Rules Committee. Mr. President, Roy has always been committed to doing the big things, but he's also very solutions-oriented and very clear-eyed and practical about what's achievable in a place where it's hard to get things done. He has a saying, never announce publicly what you won't vote for. And what he means by that is that you shouldn't back yourself into a position where you can't support a good compromise. That while it's not always possible to get everything you want, you shouldn't let that stop you from doing as much good as you can. Mr. President, Roy's done a lot of good during his time in Congress. And one of his lasting legacies will be the bipartisan achievements in the healthcare space, including his efforts to help create and expand the Certified Community Behavioral Health Clinics program to improve access to mental health care and championing medical research. The facility housing the NIH's Center for Alzheimer's and Related Dementia is actually named after Roy in honor of his longtime work to support dementia research. And of course, no mention of Roy's legacy would be complete without mentioning his stalwart advocacy for the people of Missouri. Mr. President, I'm going to miss Roy, and the Senate will miss Roy. But I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to serve together, and I'm happy that he will have more time to spend with Abby and his children and grandchildren. Roy has made a lasting impact here in the Senate, and I look forward to seeing his next chapter. Mr. President, shortly before Thanksgiving, one of the great icons of the Senate, Senator Jim Inhofe, gave his farewell speech. And I want to take the time today to honor his service. As I said, Jim is one of the icons of the Senate, and it's difficult to imagine things here without him. Over his 28-year career, he's built an incredible legacy, particularly when it comes to building up our military and developing our relationships in Africa. One of the first trips I took when I got to the Senate was a trip with Jim to Iraq and Germany to meet with some of our troops and to talk to our military leadership. I'd like to think I'm a pretty energetic guy, but I was left in awe by Jim Inhofe. He's like the Energizer Bunny. He left people half his age in the dust, and I don't know anybody who works harder than Jim. He leads by example, and his legislative achievements are a tribute to his tireless service. Mr. President, everyone knows that Jim Inhofe is an accomplished legislator, but not everyone knows that Jim is also an accomplished pilot. He has over 11,000 flight hours. I mentioned he's like the Energizer Bunny, and he's flown an airplane around the world. I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to be his passenger once as we flew around Oklahoma, and it remains one of the best flights that I've ever taken. Mr. President, while I deeply admire Jim's work ethic and his legislative achievements, and his piloting prowess, I might add, the thing I appreciate the most about Jim Inhofe is that he is a man of deep and profound faith. I've been blessed to gather with him and other senators for Bible study for a number of years now, and I don't think he's ever missed a session. When I think about Jim, I think about the verse in 1 Peter that says, and I quote, Sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you." End quote. Mr. President, Jim Inhofe is always ready to give that defense. Jim isn't a man who pays lip service to his faith. He models it and he lives it. In word and deed, he is a great ambassador for his Savior. And I will miss his presence and his witness. Mr. President, while I will miss Jim being in the Senate, I'm glad that he and his beloved wife, Kay, will now have more time to spend together with their children and their grandchildren. And I wish him the very best of retirements. He has more than earned some time off. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President, before our colleague
Senator from Delaware
leaves the floor, let me just say the Bible study that he's referenced is one that he and I and a handful of other Democrats and Republicans join in every Thursday when we're in session with Barry Black, the chaplain of the Senate. And it's been hosted literally in the hideaway of Jim Inhofe. And so it's a home game for him, but it's a home game for Democrats and Republicans just to share some time together in prayer and faith and really some of the challenges we face. And some people across the country, if you watch the news all the time, you think we hate each other here. You think we never want to work together, never want to get anything done. And thanks in no small part to Jim Inhofe's hospitality and participation and example, that's not the case. So I just want to add my comments as well. He's the, I think, maybe the two-time chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee, and a great partner with me on reducing emissions from buses and diesel engines and stuff like that. So he's the lead Republican on the Diesel Emission Reduction Act. So I just want to say that there's some good environmentalists in Oklahoma, and on a number of issues that we've dealt with, Jim Inhofe has been one of those. So
would the Senator from Delaware yield for just a minute? Sure. Just say and adding, and to thank you for what you've said both about Senator Inhofe and about our Bible study. And I would say to all of our colleagues that of all the time we spend here each and every week, that particular hour is arguably the most impactful, and always encourage other of our colleagues to join us. But we have been meeting, as Senator Carper mentioned, in Senator Inhofe's office now for many, many years, and have been very blessed by his leadership, not only here in the Senate, but his witness with regard to his faith.
People ask me, like, what do you like most about being in the Senate? What do you like most about public service? I like helping people. And when they ask me more specifically, what gives you joy in the Senate, it's that Thursday, it's that half an hour we spend together just about every Thursday, and always pleased to be there with our colleagues. Sometimes even work out in the gym together. All right, now to talk about another Jim, and I've been joined by Chris Coons, our senator from the state of Delaware, and I'm delighted to join Senator Coons and also our colleague in the House. We only have one congressional seat in the House, and it's filled by Lisa Blunt Rochester. And we're all going to be talking, not today here on the floor, Senator Coons and I will be, but I think Lisa will be talking over in the House about Jim Gardner. Who is Jim Gardner? He is an icon. You know, that's a word we hear a whole lot, but he is truly an icon. He's signing off the air after 40 years of delivering the news for WPVI 6 ABC, which really is the dominant, if you will, television station in the whole Delaware Valley, including Delaware and southeastern Pennsylvania, parts of Maryland, parts of New Jersey as well. But Jim's been delivering the news for, not just for that station, but he's been delivering the news for all of us. And one of the reasons why the station has enjoyed incredible ratings is in no small part because of his presence on the station. He's been a steady voice for viewers in the region, anchoring the 6 p.m. and the 11 p.m. Newscast for as long as I can remember. And throughout that time, he earned the respect, he earned the trust of millions of viewers who invited him into their home on their televisions every night, including our home in Delaware. Mr. President, Jim's career was born before he even graduated college. He was attending, I think it was Columbia University in the late 1970s. Our country was in turmoil over race in the Vietnam War, a war in which I served. His first ever report was on the historic student riots on campus that gave him his first taste of of broadcast journalism. He went on to report for a radio station, I think it was WINS Radio, and then another station called WFAS and WKBW TV in New York City, before making his way down south to join us in the Delaware Valley in 1976 when he joined WPVI-TV as a reporter and as anchor for Action News at Noon. And just shy of 1 year later, he became the anchor of the 6 o'clock news and the 11 o'clock broadcast, where he has been every night since, helping guide viewers through noteworthy events both globally and locally. Over the years, Jim's assignments include interviews. He's interviewed a lot of presidents and folks who maybe aspire to be president. I don't. But among those are Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and a scrappy kid from Scranton who ended up as Senator from Delaware, Joe Biden. He's now our president. But throughout the years, Jim has interviewed Philadelphia mayors. I can't count all the ones, from Frank Rizzo to Jim Kinney, and he's covered, I think, 21 political conventions. Think about that. 21 political conventions. For that, there's a special place in heaven for Jim Carter for doing that, I'll tell you. But locally, Jim was the narrating voice of our 2008 Phillies and 2018 Eagles World Championship parades, and those teams were really good this year as well. The Phillies made it all the way to the World Series, and the Eagles are knocking on the door to do something special in the NFL playoffs later this year. But as the Action News opening song says, move closer to your world. And he's also traveled abroad to help us understand some of the biggest stories in history, not just in Delaware, not just the Delaware Valley, but across the world. He reported from the Vatican to cover the death, for example, of Pope Paul VI. He traveled to Germany to cover the return of American hostages from Iran. He reported from Russia and Lithuania after the fall of the Soviet Union. He covered the Oslo Accords from Israel and from the West Bank. He traveled to Cuba to cover Pope John Paul II, and then went to Argentina to report on the life of Pope Francis. Perhaps what has allowed Jim to hold the trust of his viewers while engaging his audience night after night is that no matter where he's traveled, he understands what matters to his viewers. Most can be found right in our own backyards, at community events, at school boards and town council meetings, houses of worship, and by talking to our neighbors. So it's with great pleasure that we rise on behalf of Delaware's congressional delegation to honor the exemplary career of Jim Gardner. Now, I want to say, Jim, to you and your family, congratulations on a job well done. And we want to convey our thanks to your wife, Amy. And there's a special place in heaven for her and for our spouses as well. But to your 4 children for sharing their dad with us and the people of our region of America. Delaware Valley is a better place because of you, my friend. God bless, Godspeed. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm pleased to yield to my wingman from Delaware.
Thank you, Mr. President.